ToonGrin.
It's Halloween. That means there's some spooky stuff happening out there.
Alone, in the darkness, waiting for you.
Luckily, we got each other, and I feel like talking about some animated monsters that give me the heebies and the jeebies. Sure, I'm a grown man, but what was spooky as a kid takes on somehow more horrifying presence with the imagination of an adult. Especially me, because I'm basically a man-child. We're gonna be doing a top 10 of animated monsters, and when I mean animated, I mean the whole spectrum of animation. So let's just rip and tear. Bill Cipher from Gravity Falls. Bill is the closest thing to a Jin in terms of how he acts. He comes off playful and subservient, but then twists and turns your words to mean whatever he wants them to mean. He takes your life and plays with it like a toy until it finally breaks. And then once you're useless, you end up as amongst the rest of the discarded toys that'll probably inevitably make his throne. There are really no other ways to describe Bill Cipher. He is a delightfully horrific character. In your dreams, he could torment you like Freddy Krueger. But then once he comes to the real world, it's even far worse. Because then all the dream stuff becomes a frickin' nightmare.
You two wait here! I've got some children I need to make into corpses!
The Vathek from Extreme Ghostbusters.
Brethren, let the procedure begin.
They're Cenobites! For kids! The Vathek appear in the episode Deadliners, and are creatures from beyond our world. They're not really ghosts, the show made that kind of clear, but there's something else. They show up, they make a Faustian deal with a desperate author in exchange for fame and fortune, and thus they are brought to life. These beings from beyond are led by Craniac, a ghoulish master surgeon that looks at flesh the same way a sculptor looks at clay. The designs are horrific enough, with mutilated flesh, but with their personalities, they take delight in their work. Flesh is nothing but a canvas to them, where these artists will cut, nip, and tuck to craft something that only they themselves will ever find beautiful. Ko the Face Stealer from Avatar: The Last Airbender. What do you remember about Avatar? Fun, adventure, culture, magnificent creatures, and a face-stealing god. See, Ko to me is just eerie. The whole face-stealing thing alone is pretty terrifying in its own right, but then you have to take into account, we can't show emotion around him. That's the only way you get to survive an encounter. And we're humans, we get emotional about everything. Then on top of that, to get to him, you have to go into an underground hovel. No, I have to go in near darkness to find some kind of centipede abomination with like an eye for a head that blinks to show me the face of its victims just so it could try and steal my own face? That's emotionally jarring, and quite honestly, it arguably makes Ko one of the most memorable characters of that franchise. Also one of the most underutilized characters of that franchise.
I must be going now.
We'll meet again.
No Face from Spirited Away. No Face is interesting in that he's normally rather docile and timid. However, he is a slave to his emotions. Literally. No Face changes by the emotions around him, and unfortunately this can corrupt him, and it results in him becoming very carnivorous and he starts eating people. And then that in turn means he assimilates their personalities and physical traits, and that's really creepy. The idea of emotional consumption causing corruption, it's interesting, as well as horrifying. Taking the worst traits of people, and then just gestating it to a gelatinous hodgepodge of tar, acting as a force of nature with nothing more than a desire to consume, that's horrifying.
Excuse me.
Oogie Boogie from The Nightmare Before Christmas. This goes back to a very childlike mentality. The fact that it's this living bag of bugs is already creepy enough, but on top of that, this guy is the boogeyman. Virtually every culture has some form of this myth in some way or shape or form. But as an adult, you sort of start to recognize something. Bogey has quite the sadistic nature. In fact, he seems to take quite the delight in, tormenting people. And to take it a step even further, he is highly carnivorous. So, it's not bad enough that you will indeed be tortured in your immediate future if you happen to come across Oogie Boogie, but in the end, your suffering will only stop once you've been ingested by him. His innards, which is consistent of bugs and one snake, will then in turn slowly consume you alive until you are nothing. On the plus side, you get to hear the Oogie Boogie song.
Hopeless, you're finished. You haven't got a prayer. Cause I'm Mr. Oogie Boogie, and you ain't going nowhere.
Other Mother from Coraline. The first view of Other Mother is early on. The first 2 minutes, as a matter of fact, you see her. She just dissects a doll and then stitches it up to look like Coraline, the lead character. And that's off-putting. The music accompanying it makes it very, very creepy. And then she shows up. She has buttons for eyes. This is scary beyond all reason. And then her true form shows up. And this is where it's scary beyond all reason. I take back the first part. Clearly in the second part, that's where she's the scariest. She's a combination of an abusive mother, an emotion vampire, she's got needles. She's all kinds of horror, all done in one. Neil Gaiman, what were you on? Where can I get some? This was an awesome read, by the way. This book is really trippy. Kudos. But no, this movie's scary as hell.
Mom? What are you doing here in the middle of the night?
You're just in time for supper, dear.
Ryuk from Death Note. As if his physical appearance of what can only be described as a combination of an albino, metalhead, and goth fashion, and all the love of that is Hot Topic. Ryuk embodies this sort of primordial fear of God that really harkens back to my upbringing. As a kid, I was raised Catholic for a stint. So the whole concept of Ryuk, the notion that this god, this deity, a death god nonetheless, comes down to earth out of sheer boredom, only to play with fragile mortal lives, to watch everything that happens, to take everything we know and love, and to basically drag it down through the depths, through the dregs, and through the heartlessness of reality, to see how horrible things end up for us. And then, once the god is bored, they will just sprout their wings, rage quit, and then, with nothing more than a pen and paper, simply kill us, discarding us away like garbage. That is just simply horrifying.
Well, Light, it's been interesting.
The Sandworms from Beetlejuice. This is going to be interesting because this also plays on the idea of eternal entrapment. Think about it like this. You're dead. That's not enough. You're stuck haunting your house for eternity. That's not enough. Because then if you're stuck in your house and people get on that you're a ghost, you risk exorcism, thus death for the dead. But that's not enough. You figure, I'm gonna leave, I don't have to stay here. I can just leave the house. You cannot leave the house, because if you go outside, these freaking worms show up, and they want to eat you. They ain't never tasted no corpse before. It's like being trapped on a boat in the middle of shark-infested waters. The only difference is, you'll eventually die on the boat of starvation. But man, that tempting idea of going outside, basically like a giant guard dog watching you for all eternity, that's scary.
Whoa, sandworms. You hate them, right? I hate them myself!
The Mysterious Stranger from The Adventures of Mark Twain. Now, claymation alone has always sort of had this uncanny valley feel to it, so it's always kind of off-putting. Especially if it's older claymation, because then it was just a starting form of art style and it gets really creepy. But then you add Satan and well, you know how it goes. See, the real creep factor comes from how Satan acts in this short bit. He's all calm and inviting, he's rather polite and kind of generous. He's able to take a barren wasteland and turn it into a perpetual Garden of Eden brimming with life. And then he starts talking about, with his nihilistic views of how humanity sucks, how life is pointless, particularly how humans are disgusting creatures, and over time he slowly becomes more and more demonic as his internal rage intensifies. Everything starts with this eerie calm of how he speaks so gentle and inviting, and then he slowly spirals out of control, and you get to see Satan's true intent. He hates us. He has no seemingly understanding of consequences of life or concern for life. Good, bad, he sees neither, because he doesn't understand neither, and yet he wields all this power.
Life itself is only a vision, a dream. Nothing exists save empty space, and you are but a thought.
Vampire Joker from the Batman vs. Dracula. You know, it's funny, I originally thought adding Joker would be a lazy cop-out. The idea that he's just a serial killer while everything else on the list is a more supernatural kind of breed. But then I remembered that there was actually a time when the Joker had a touch of the supernatural to him. In the movie The Batman vs. Dracula, the Count arrives in Gotham City and slowly starts turning Gothamites into his army of the undead. And of course the Clown Prince of Crime is no exception to this rule, and soon we find him walking amongst the undead horde. The fact that Joker has such an erratic, insane personality always makes him kind of off-putting. He's always kind of creepy in his own right as is, because he delights in tormenting people, he delights in hurting people, and he has fun doing it. You add the supernatural angle to it, where he's just eating people now? Well, that's just grade A nightmare fuel in my opinion. One of the biggest benefits actually to push the fear factor for the Batman as a series is the art style. There's such an exaggerated look to it, and Joker, he comes off as one of the most ungodly, horrifying suckheads imagined. Plus, you know, he's a clown, so I mean, he's a clown, he's a vampire, he's a serial killer. The dude's a freaking hat trick of horror.
Betsy, you complete me.
And this was my top 10 animated monsters. What are some animated beasties that gave you a fright? Feel free to comment below, and who knows, maybe next year I can do a follow-up. Remember, you can support us by sharing the vid, hitting the like button, and stopping by our TeePublic shirt shop or our Patreon. The link is in the description below. Thanks for watching, stay strong, and stay safe.